Hi, my name is David Herle. You may have heard of me from contexts such as running political campaigns, commenting on politics on the CBC, or my recent podcast, The Herle Burly. But professionally, I'm a public opinion researcher, a pollster. Part of opinion research is a thing called a focus group, a facilitated discussion. I've moderated hundreds, maybe thousands of these. They're extraordinarily valuable in understanding how people think about issues. They reveal true intensity of feeling, candidness, what words and constructs people use when talking about an issue or a politician, the strength of an argument to persuade. Marketers and political parties have used focus groups for years to shape their strategies and communications. Now Air Quotes Media is bringing them to you. Through the Looking Glass, presented by Telus, is a show that uses focus groups to show you how important issues are being conceptualized, thought about, expressed by ordinary Canadians. Hands up if you've seen that image.
I don't think it's all hockey and Tim Hortons.
We're going through genocide and we're still paying taxes.
Many of us now live in silos of our own creation, silos that prevent us from hearing and understanding where people are coming from. You'll see exactly where they're coming from on Through the Looking Glass. No filters, just real talk. If I could start off just with a pretty broad question about the election campaign, what did you pay attention to this week? What caught your eye? What caught your interest? Anybody start us off? Antonio.
Well, there was a few things this week. It was actually a lot of news this week, I noticed. I mean, the first thing was the Liberals kind of caught my interest, or I was them editing out some statements by O'Toole to make it sound like it's just something different, right? So I understand there's always a little bit of game playing, but just right away, one of the first things to see this week was, them talking about them cutting out piece of audio, and then just a lot of, and then the other thing for me was just the announcements that seem to be coming this week, for the housing. Well, we're doing this for the housing. We're doing this, like we were talking about last week, that, the curbing the housing. Now they're talking moratoriums. Both conservative and liberal platforms are pretty similar looking. Seems like they add a little bit to each because now the other one's similar to the other one. Those were the couple of things that just caught my notice, was the manipulation, and then the housing stuff, because that was a topic we talked about last week, and I've seen a lot of announcements on it. So.
Thanks, Antonio. Sardul, what did you see this week in the campaign?
Right. What I see is, number one, the issue from Afghanistan. That's very hot. The second issue, what happened yesterday in Bolton, Mr. Trudeau could not attend that rally there.
Right.
This is we heard this morning in 680 radio. Also, some of the community talk thing happening, because they're saying is our government didn't do a good job to bring all Canadian people back from Afghanistan.
Okay. Sonny, anything catch your eye in the campaign this week?
I think it was just what I found interesting was with that video from O'Toole, and how the Liberals really kind of took it and ran with it. Like even Jagmeet Singh made a comment that, when it's not, I think he made something like it's not authentic and we don't want to play that kind of strategy. But I found it was interesting that Justin Trudeau just kind of took it and really played it up.
Okay. Art?
I looked at all the platforms and the promises and whatnot they were saying, but there's very little talk on how they're going to fund it, which I find disturbing. I want to know how it's going to affect us, because I know there's been a little talk maybe charging the banks more or taxing the rich and all that, but I don't think that's going to fully fund it. And if that's the case, especially the banks, they're just going to pass the cost on to the consumers, which is going to increase inflation. So I like to see how more thought put into how they're going to fund their promises.
Okay. Tara, what stood out for you this week in the campaign? Tara, I'm sorry. I have a friend called Tara, and it's my default mechanism.
So for me, the thing I saw the most was on the housing. So I felt like it's almost like every week they choose a theme, and this one was the housing I heard the most about. And then my other thing was, my daughter had told me that Jagmeet Singh is on TikTok. So I was watching TikTok to see if I saw any other videos. So I thought that was interesting that he was on there.
What does it tell you about him that he's on there? Why is it interesting that he's
The
on there?
young people. He's obviously looking for the young person's vote. Yeah.
And on housing, did anything that anybody said about it stand out to you? Do you have the sense that there's housing will be more affordable if somebody wins this election?
I noticed the Liberal platform is that they want to bring in a plan for savings, tax-free savings for housing. But with a lot of the younger people that live from paycheck to paycheck, they don't have extra money to put into savings. That doesn't really help them.
Mm-hmm. To add to that too, they put a year 40 cap on it. So if you exceed being 40 years old, then you can't use it. Like, I'm sorry, I'm 38. So that gives me 2 years. I'm not going to get there on that time frame. And why this age gap? It makes no sense. First home is a first home, right?
Right. Jane, tell me what you're thinking about the campaign right now.
Well, one of the things that I found interesting this week was after we had our talk last week and we were talking about the vaccinations and things, it came out that Aaron O'Toole, even though he said that he's pro-choice when it comes to vaccines, turns out that all his staffers that are accompanying him on the campaign trail and all the media that are accompanying him on the campaign trail have to be vaxxed. So I thought that was pretty hypocritical, say one thing and do another.
Okay. Any other thoughts about what was going on in the campaign this week?
Like Tara said, it seems like the theme of the week, and I didn't see a huge difference between what the party leaders were saying.
Okay. Dragon.
Yeah,
what you
David,
got?
earlier this, I wanted to also mention what happened yesterday, that there was a cancellation with Justin Trudeau here in Bolton, Ontario, just outside of Toronto. And because crowd was very angry about the passport vaccination. So there was a big disruption. And earlier this week, Jagmeet's pledge for more healthcare, including dental coverage.
We're in the thick of this election, which means 99.999% of you Herle Burlyites are getting your fix of news and digital information with more alacrity than ever. I mean, if we're 10 minutes late getting the curse up, my phone starts pinging with your increasingly desperate texts and tweets. Guys, it makes me feel warm all over. Not every Canadian can afford that kind of digital access, though. Our presenting sponsor, Telus, knows it, and they're committed to making the situation better, which is why in 2020, Telus expanded the reach of their Mobility for Good program and launched Telus Mobility for Good for seniors. It provides seniors who receive the Guaranteed Income Supplement access to discounted devices and subsidized mobility rate plans, so they can stay connected to loved ones, important healthcare tools and information, and just to be entertained by and share the stuff the internet provides. Specifically, Telus Mobility for Good for seniors is a discounted refurbished smartphone, unlimited talk and text, and 3 gigabytes of data for only $25 a month. It's no small gesture. Across Canada, 2.2 million seniors are eligible for the program. And it's more than the dollars and cents of it. The heart of this is about really connecting. Access to digital technology and what it provides has been proven to help seniors fight feelings of isolation, contributing to their mental well-being. Nothing beats being there in person, but suddenly friends and family aren't miles away, they're just a couple of clicks away. I don't have to tell you how important that was during lockdown. You can learn more about it all at telus.com/connectingcanada. Great, thank you. Hey, did anybody see any advertising from any of the political parties this week on Facebook or on television or on the radio, anywhere? Did anybody hear or see any advertising from the parties? Daryl, would you?
A little bit.
What'd you see?
the wife was watching TV. I was in the other room, but I heard an ad for, I can't recall if it was the Conservatives or NDP because I tuned it out right after the beginning, but it started with one of those clickbaity headlines. It was, this is what Justin Trudeau doesn't want you to hear. It's like, that's a terrible lead in. I literally tuned right out. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be just some bullshit stuff. That makes no sense now. And I listen to CBC quite a bit on the radio at work, so I hear some on there as well, but mostly the same type ads. You just kind of tune them out after a minute because it's just silly. All attack ads, you just don't care after a minute.
Yeah.
Anybody see an ad this week or hear an ad that made an impact on you?
The same ads that I've seen last week.
No.
Oh, yes.
I heard some on TKW, but they didn't make an impact. Like I don't even remember them. I remember hearing the things. For me, I just try and listen to the actual news things because those, like the actual announcements that they make and what they're pledging, right? But but like one friend, they're asking, oh, will this actually have? It sounds good. I said, yeah. Well, the sales pitch is always better than the reality, right, Daryl?
Yeah. Well, hey, wait a minute. That's about me. Usually the case, though, right?
You can
get a free phone. Just pay this money.
Yeah, with the political parties, I find that their sales pitch is always the ads, just especially when they're attack ads.
Same with me. I just ignore the attack ads. I just tune out on them. They do nothing for me.
Would it be consensus that we all ignore those?
Well,
just out of curiosity, right?
I do.
I would believe all of you if I hadn't seen them have such impact over the years. CC, we've been at this for 2 weeks now. Election campaign's been on for 2 weeks. Tell me what you're seeing from Justin Trudeau. What are you thinking about Justin Trudeau right now?
Hasn't changed much, but I think last week, I think a lot of people mentioned it sounds like the theme for last week is really real estate. So as more information about the Conservative Party's housing policy or what they plan to do reveals more details, I feel like it's becoming more and more similar with all the other party, like the 2 years, even though the tactic may be slightly different, but I feel like it's pretty much fairly similar. There isn't a whole lot of difference between the various party there. And last week, I feel like I don't think there's much that he have done or said last week had made an impact or lasting memories in my mind.
Okay. Anybody else? Talk to me about Justin Trudeau right now. What are you seeing?
I've seen. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it wasn't from him directly, but it was a couple of comments that were made from the other parties that made me think of Justin Trudeau differently. The first one was regards to the housing, because that is an issue to me. And I am not 48 or 38. I am over 50 and I've never owned my own house. And now I'm single, that it becomes more and more of a difficulty. But was the statement that Justin Trudeau has had 6 years to look at the housing, which has been an issue for a long time, and he hasn't chose to do so. So that kind of stood in my mind because it has been an issue for a long time. It's not new with COVID. And then the second one was on Facebook, a comment which I had seen before saying, don't vote in the Conservatives just because you don't like the Liberals signed Ontario, because that's what happened here and we paid for it greatly. So
I actually saw that Facebook ad as well on mine. So that was a big surprise because usually you don't see stuff like that. But I had also seen in the news, like Trudeau's just come through Surrey recently as well and doing his talks through there. And there seemed to be like a rolling group of people who are following him around, protesting and causing a lot of noise and disruption. And it's quite appalling, the behavior that these people have. Like, if we're supposed to be a civilized people, they are not behaving that way. And obviously I'm going to jump to the conclusion and say that they're not Liberal supporters. And so it doesn't paint your party in a good light if that's the kind of behavior that you're having. Whether it affects anything, I don't know, but it certainly doesn't look very good. But also the fact that they're following him around is concerning, because I've seen some pictures and it was the same. It was two people in the pictures from Surrey who were in Ontario just the other day as well. So they're literally following him. So makes you wonder where did they get the money from somebody, or is this their own personal agenda? That's a bit scary, right?
Ardil, what are you seeing out of Justin Trudeau on the campaign so far?
I didn't follow him too much this week. What I'm seeing it, due to the numbers I see in the nanopolls and all that stuff, he's a little bit nervous. I speak to a couple of ex-MPs. They're also saying he's in trouble. And his number is good in 905 areas. And he's losing a lot of support in all outside of the greater Toronto. That's what I heard. And this is what I believe. The number was of the day, only 0 point something different between him and the O2.
Tell me about Justin Trudeau.
Yeah, I think I watched that video yesterday. It was about he was doing something in a small town, and then people are just like protesting him. So it wasn't nice. And the other thing I heard in this week is about housing, and the Conservative would like to allow people to borrow more to be able to afford a housing, whereas Liberal wants to encourage people to save more before they buy their house. However, in my opinion, I think none of the strategy is going to work for such a skyrocket price for the housing in Canada, or rather in the big cities. In terms of the ads, actually, I just listened to the two ads from both parties. However, none of them leave me any impression. I just forgot all of them.
Okay. And what about Aaron O'Toole? This is a person that many of you had never heard of 2 weeks ago. And now he is, let's pick up on what Sardul says, he is apparently tied in the polls with Justin Trudeau, with the chance to be prime minister. Is he making a positive impression on you? Antonio?
So I found, like, not knowing anything about him, and seen a few different things, I was shocked to hear that he's a year younger than Trudeau, who said that last week, I think, here. So that was shocking, but regardless, I thought he was just an older, just a bit older, maybe, more experience under his belt than Trudeau, right? So kind of, anyways, the announcements that he's making, if I didn't look into his personal choices of how he voted and what he supported in previous caucuses, I would say that, he's definitely trying to bring his party more centrist, trying to go after those voters. And I think he's, to be tied in the polls, I think that's what he's doing. He's a lot of their announcements that they're making. I think for me personally, it was, see, he would, done medical service, military service, was a respectful thing. And then you read an article from a military person about what his service was, kind of, you see the back and forth now, right? Trying to downplay what he did as just being the bare minimum to get his, schooling requirements through RCM or MC and whatnot, right? So obviously it can make you a little jaded about what for some person's intentions were, but overall, I think he's not made a personal impact on me like that, very much more positive. Maybe I'm more informed of who he is now, which I like to know, he has a chance to be our prime minister, and like to see there is some, redeeming qualities of the person, but on the other side, his historical voting makes me concerned, right? More than what his platform is.
Yeah. Somebody else, tell me what you're seeing or thinking about Aaron O'Toole right now.
Oh, sorry. I just noticed that a lot of the parties this week seem to be focusing also on pharmacare. They all have different ways to deal with prescription medicine.
Right. Back to O'Toole, though. Yeah. Who's got a feeling about O'Toole?
I can add a little bit because I've also done a lot more just research general looking up. If I take him on face value for what he's saying, I actually like what he's saying for the most part. I don't agree with everything, but as we know in politics, overpromise, underdeliver. It's every single cycle.
What's a for instance of something you like, Daryl?
Well, I like what he's saying about a little bit about like their budget plan. I know it won't work, but at least he's saying these things, and he's talking in ways that are helping to bring the undecided votes onto his side, which is where he's surging, right? It does sound like he's trying to bring the party more centrist, but like we talked about as well, historically he isn't. So if you didn't know anything about him prior, as we kind of did, and now it's been a focus of ours, if you took him at face value, then it would look like that makes a lot of sense. He's saying these things, that's where he's going, but I don't know if I can trust him still.
Okay. Anybody else have any impression of Aaron O'Toole?
I was actually reading an article today about all the different leaders, how they're going, their itinerary, where they're going. And it was interesting that O'Toole was the only one that isn't really traveling, right? So I thought that was interesting, the way, I guess, his campaign strategy. I know they were talking about Justin Trudeau, how he flew from Quebec to Vancouver and then back to Quebec. And then they were kind of saying how O'Toole's strategy was different, where he's kind of staying in his, hotel studio and kind of running things from there. So yeah. I thought that was pretty interesting, or a little bit of an insight into, maybe the type of person he is or what type of campaign he's running.
And what's that insight? What does that make you think about him?
Could be a good strategy. Could be that he's sticking closer to home or people around him. Yeah. I thought maybe that's a good thing, where he's actually not spending so much dollars on, flying jets or going across country. So I thought, that kind of gave me like, okay, maybe a plus point for O'Toole there.
Interesting. Cece, what do you got on O'Toole?
He's on mute.
You're on mute, Cece.
Sorry, I was blowing my nose earlier, and so I don't want you guys to hear that. I think the other topic, I think with last week is international topic is really Afghanistan, right? Like we heard a lot about, what US is doing. So last week, I didn't hear anything like directly, like in terms like personal talks or seeing him on TV regarding O'Toole, but I really hearing is on the internet, on the Afghanistan topic is really about either party, including, O'Toole himself, like backslashing, I guess, Justin Trudeau's and Liberals' overall strategy of getting, the Canadians or people who had held Canadian troops in terms of like getting them out of the country. So that to me, like, again, I feel like it's all really about backslashing the competition. So I don't know if that's, to me, that's actually a little bit like negative impression, just because I do think like Canada has done a lot in terms of getting, the people out of the country as much as possible. So to me, that's, just really a bit of a strategy around getting attention in the media.
Right. We're going to come back. I want to talk to you about Afghanistan. So we're going to come back and talk about that issue specifically. Before we get there, though, let's talk about Singh, Jagmeet Singh. What kind of impression is he making on you on the campaign trail? Jane?
I watched some of the of his little bits of his speeches this week, and he spoke very well, and I agree with a lot of what he says. But no change in impression. I like I've said before, I actually lean NDP. That's who I vote for provincially. So yeah, I mean, I like the platform.
Okay. Anybody else? What are you noticing about Jagmeet Singh? Yi.
Yeah, I heard about, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if I heard this completely correctly. It says like they're going to give a big something wave in terms of the university student tuition, something like that. Is that correct?
I think they're going to give interest-free loans and cancel the more grants, forgive loans.
Yeah, seems like that, if I'm not wrong. So, but this like, I thought I heard that they are going to cancel all these like loans, which they have borrowed already, or this is not true.
But anyway, tell me what it would say to you. Like, what does the matter? How does it affect your feeling about Jagmeet Singh?
Well, if just in terms of that policy, that I'm thinking like, can I get my part back?
Fair.
Even though I graduated a long time ago.
Yeah. Dragon, what are you noticing about Jagmeet Singh? Is he having a good campaign or a bad campaign?
I think he's having a good campaign so far. I like all the pledges making. And from providing better healthcare, pledging better healthcare, including dental coverage, better affordable housing. I like the guy, I really do. He's still my favorite candidate. Like I voted for Andrea Horwath in the provincial election here in Ontario. Unfortunately, she's my favorite, but she lost again. But so I like Jagmeet Singh. I still want him to win, but I just don't think I like the pledges this he's making. And I think if he had enough votes, he could be he could have become our next prime minister. But he's not gonna get enough votes, in my opinion. But I like all the pledges this he's making. I like him so far.
Sardil?
What do you think? What I saw with Jagmeet Singh, he's doing very good in campaign. And a lot of people talking about NDP policies and all that stuff. And what I heard from different ridings, he will pick up more seats than before. Because dental, medical care, drugs, all these things affecting everybody. And if people start to think about him, he's take care of the people, not just talk about that. And he's a very good speaker. He have a very good knowledge, and I had a feeling he will gain more seats this time than last time. And it will hurt Liberal.
Okay. Sonny, what's your kind of reaction to Jagmeet Singh? How do you feel about Jagmeet Singh as a person?
I'm kind of warming up to him. I do like some of the stuff he is saying. So in terms of like healthcare, looking out for student debt. So I do like those type of things, and I probably will be paying more attention to what he says, like moving on in the campaign.
How would you compare him to Trudeau? Compare Singh to Trudeau.
Well, this week I found that, I don't know, at least for me, I found Jagmeet Singh was more visible to me. Like I saw him more, heard more of him than Trudeau. I think some of what Jagmeet Singh's saying, like the Liberals won't do this, won't do that. Like, I'm not really impressed with that. But I think in terms of, it seems like Jagmeet Singh is a little bit more aggressive when it comes to, like, he feels like he can get more stuff done than Trudeau.
Okay. Art, how do you feel about how do you compare Trudeau and Singh?
Well, this week it seems to be focusing more on his platform and less than telling us what's wrong with the other guys. I think he's a little bit more transparent than Mr. Trudeau is. I think he tends to present himself more honestly, whereas maybe Mr. Trudeau is kind of more guarded in what he's saying.
Okay. Tara?
I didn't really see a lot this week, other than my TikTok video and then things that they were saying in the news. So in terms of ads, I did kind of get the feeling this week that there's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And I feel like Trudeau has a lot of the devil you know hitting him. I saw a lot of negative. So even just like the people behind him talking trying to talk above him when he's presenting things, like the ones protesting him, and just the comments like made about the housing, and he hasn't done anything so far. It seems easy to put somebody down. And I did see, like, I think Jagmeet did say some of those things as opposed to what they can do.
Interesting. Okay, so 2 weeks into the campaign, it seems as if it's a close election, which some people may not have anticipated. It seems like it's a close election, and a lot of people are still asking the question, what is this election about? So let me ask you, based on everything you have in your head, the first 2 weeks of the campaign and everything else, at this point in time, what would change if the Conservatives were to win and Trudeau were to lose? What would change? Antonio.
I mean, I guess one of the key things I noticed that would change, that the Conservatives are basically saying, is things like, to do with like the childcare plan, or things like, the taxes that they would, same Conservative put that money in the hands of the people to choose what they're going to do, whether it's, like with the daycare, we're going to give credits back, but it doesn't account for how you're going to build spaces. But, just like even the housing plan, right? Just a little more tax back to you, and then you do with the money what you can. It's a long time held Conservative position, and that kind of a little bit government coming out of those things, not in the business of doing that. Just you decide what you're going to do with the money, and compared to the Liberal side, where and I mean, a lot of what the Trudeau went on this week was basically, I heard him on the radio here in Vancouver on CKNW, was basically what he's looking for is a mandate to do whatever he wants, right? He's looking, for whatever years ago he said that we got elected and we were with the platform, and now they're looking for the right to do whatever they want. Basically, if you listen to the words behind his words, behind the lines, it was, give us the power to do whatever we want because that's what you're going to elect us to do. Like it's kind of in the most cynical way, like we're just give us the best, give us a majority so that we get to do whatever we want.
Okay, Jane.
Yeah, well, when Trudeau was in the first 4 years, he actually did have a majority government. So it's just in this last 2 years that he's been a minority government, and they've had to rely on the other parties to pass legislation. So, I understand why he wants to go back to that majority government, so that there is he doesn't have to deal with some of the resistance, especially when he's got to make quick decisions on things like the pandemic. But I was going to say, with addressing your question of what will change, that's what concerns me with the Conservative government, because I base my decision a lot on what the previous governments have done. I mean, they can all go on the air and have these ads and campaign and say, we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. And I think one of the best indicators of future behavior is past behavior. And when I look at the last Conservative government, they did a lot of things that scared me. They stripped environmental protections in a huge, huge way. As I discussed, I think it was 2 weeks ago, they made immigrants second-class citizens. They took away the right to primary health care for refugees. In addition, the vast majority of the Conservative Party believes in bringing back the abortion debate. And on top of that, there is LGBTQ rights. And a lot of, the majority of the Conservative Party believes in conversion therapy, which I strongly, strongly disagree with. Medically and health-wise, it's just a really terrible idea. And that's one of the things that Justin Trudeau has been trying to address in this term, is to try and make that illegal. And I believe it should be illegal. So when I look at the past record of what the Conservatives have done, I don't want to see a government like that again, like the Harper government again. And even though O'Toole is trying to present this centrist appearance, I think that's disingenuous, because if you look at the views of his party, they're not centrist.
Thanks, Jane. Somebody else got an answer to this question. What would change if the Conservatives replaced the Liberals? Daryl?
I got a little bit. Yeah, with like Antonio mentioned, they talk about wanting to put more money back in the hands of the people so they can make the decision that's best for them in their situation. It sounds great. It's a rosy idea, but if it really worked, then we wouldn't have the majority. I don't remember the exact number, but I know it's a very high number of people who are one $300 disaster away from not paying rent. Right? If your car breaks down, many people can't just take it to the shop to get it fixed. That will bankrupt people, and giving you an extra $20 doesn't fix that problem. We need to have safety nets in place, and the Conservatives are not very well known for doing that.
Okay. Anybody else? Sardul, what do you think? What do you think would change if the Conservatives won the election?
I think what will change is Liberal Party used to be throwing money out without even thinking what kind of effect on it. And O'Toole, his party was saying is money go to people's hands, they can use it where they want to use it, and they will take care of themselves for the money rather than give the money to big corporations and building up those child cares and all that stuff. And this is where misuse the money all the time. The money come to me, I will spend wisely. And if some organization will get the money, they will overspend it, big salaries paying from there, all these things going to be happen. And this is Liberal Party, very good that way, just throwing money out, not to watch where money going and where it's coming from to. We will pay all the debt, and our children will pay all the debt, and they never think about that. And he's still saying same thing, give money out, give money out, give money out. I think O'Toole's idea is very good.
I know, Sardul, that I only spend my money wisely. I've never made an unwise decision with my own money.
You're in a minority.
Anybody else who hasn't spoken?
Can I just give you one example?
Sure. Yeah.
In my street, last week, one house got sold. The gentleman bought the house 2019, $900,000 plus dollars, and he sold for 1.65. You just tell me what are kids going to do in this country? Bring more liberal, throw more money out. Nobody can afford it. I give you the address if you want for the house too.
No, so too expensive for me. I don't need that address. Anybody else? What's going to change if the Conservatives beat the Liberals? Tara?
I don't know, but Ontario can sure give you a rundown. It was this past 2 years has been horrible. I guess 3 almost. It was promises as well as to what I think like O'Toole is doing. I see these things. I understand them. This is what we want. We're going to be so much better than the Liberals that were in power before. And then it's a big lie. It's been horrible. The cuts that we had, everything that I'm not even sure we'll be back to school in September by the numbers going up and the conversations people are having and what they did for education. So I kind of see it all as, sure, you can tell me what you think I want to hear because I'm going to be better than the person you're trying to get rid of. But I think it'll be a really negative experience afterwards.
Okay. Reagan, thanks for coming back, by the way. I thought you disappeared into the ocean there.
Into the San Francisco Bay, eh? My
Reagan,
favorite city, David, besides Vancouver, my favorite city in the whole world. That's why I chose that background.
Well, it's beautiful.
What happened, David, it's my earbuds got, I have to charge them again. So I have to connect with on the US cable, the second pair of headphones. That's what happened.
You're looking good, Dragon, in every respect. Now, I know that you are leaning toward the NDP.
Still, yes.
Yes. Are you worried about the Liberals losing to the Conservatives? Does that worry you at all?
Well, what I heard from my friends, they don't like voting for conservatives, whether federal or provincial, because they're leaning more towards middle class and rich people, not poor people. NDP is more out there to help poorer people, including my favorite candidate in Ontario still, Andrea Horwath. And I don't like liberals. I hope they lose. But like I mentioned a half an hour ago, at the end of the day, there's Justin Trudeau, even though he's not my favorite, he's still going to be our prime minister again. That's the feeling I have, David. And I don't like it. I like NDP to win. But he's not going to get enough votes, unfortunately. My favorite candidate, Jagmeet Singh.
Right. Hey, can we talk about Afghanistan for just a minute? When I watch the nightly news, it's the first 15 or 20 minutes is in this past week has been on Afghanistan. So there's a lot of information about Afghanistan before you get to any coverage of the election on the nightly TV news. And obviously, does it have anything to do with the election? Is the issue in Afghanistan having any impact? You can start us off, having any impact on how you think about the election?
Of course, this is a crisis, and this is some moments that test a leader, whether the leader has any capacity to rescue the people out of the dangerous situation. This morning, I heard a news that Canada has stopped the evacuation of the people, like Canadian people, out of Afghanistan. And some people are just desperately asking for help because they're still stuck there. So they say maybe around 1,000 people still stuck there. So, but Canada has stopped evacuation. So I don't know exactly like what's the plan, but consider people are in those so dangerous place, and at any moment they can be killed. That is devastating. Of course, it's not only a Canadian issue; it's a global issue currently. But again, that is a moment for testing, but only testing for the existing government, but not any other candidate because they didn't have this opportunity to be tested.
Okay. Anybody else? What does Afghanistan have to do with the election, if anything? Well, Antonio?
I mean, overall for the election, I don't think it has a lot in the larger scope of an election campaign. It's not really like a campaign point to run on there or anything. I think how Yi said, it does show the ability of a leader to go, a country to go to the aid of its people, but it's hard to, the other two people can say whatever, they're not there in power to make the decisions to go rescue or however to do the escape. I mean, the deal to pull out was signed by the U.S. It was more so we're kind of beholden to wasn't a choice that our prime minister made. Say, oh, you know what, it's time to pull out. It was made by the U.S. and kind of forced on us. I mean, the handling of it obviously it lies on the shoulder of the prime minister and his team, but I don't think it's a like an election campaign issue. Like, oh, the next time we go to war, we're gonna we're gonna pull out better and stuff like that. It's not something that Jagmeet or O'Toole can really they can really with any confidence say what they would have done, right? So,
Art.
As I've stated before, I'm not the biggest fan of Mr. Trudeau, but I don't think what happened we can really blame him because the whole world kind of got caught off guard how fast the Taliban took over. And it's not only Canada that's faced with this crisis. There was a lot more people helping the U.S. as guides and all that in Canada, and you don't hear anything about their issue. I think it just caught everybody off guard, and I think in those circumstances, they tried to do what they could.
Okay.
So I think
Yeah. First of all, I just want to address the fact that Canada is still rescuing people. That's not true that they've withdrawn. They just simply stopped the flights. But for example, 500 people were brought out yesterday by Canada in conjunction with the US. But the thing that I want to say too is you have to realize with the military, a lot of the stuff that's going on is still going to be top secret. So you just have to understand we don't have a full picture of what's going on. They're trying to protect those people and they're trying to protect the plans, which is why Trudeau has said as little as possible about it, because it would endanger those people to give more information. So I think it's something that we're going to hear more about afterwards. So I don't want to judge anything on this. We don't have the full picture.
Okay. Daryl?
A little bit to add to that, but at the same time, whenever these operations happen, and they seem to happen just about every year or every other year, there's always a group of people, you always hear them saying, oh, we should be helping our veterans and our homeless and our poor before we help another country. And in that regard, I do believe that it will affect the election in some sense, because those people will be looking at the current government saying, well, why aren't we helping us first? It's a me first mentality a lot of the time. And I mean, I understand it, but at the same time, we have already budgeted for these kinds of things. So that's when we send in our help. And it's much bigger than we understand. Like Jane had said, there's a lot of information that we won't be privy to ever, possibly, right? The movie Argo is a great example of how that is operated all the time.
Great. Sardul?
You know what happened last year when this coronavirus was very, very strongly affecting everywhere? And my family, like me and my wife, was in India and stuck there. We have return ticket, and we cannot use those tickets. We have to pay triple the price to come back to Canada. It cost me and my wife $6,600 for airfare for two of us. And this is government arranged flights. Mostly the airfare was $1,200 to $1,400 economy fare. If you figure out, we spent $6,600 to come back here. And government didn't help anything. When you got stuck, you got to find your own way to come back. And they're all saying that liberals, we arrange the flight to come back, people, Canadian people come back, Canadian people come back. This is how we came back. With $6,600 ticket for two, normally $2,400 ticket for two.
Put your hand up if you think the Liberals are doing a bad job, if they think the Trudeau government is doing a bad job in Afghanistan right now.
I'm with Jane. I don't think we have enough information to really pass judgment. I think, as I said before, this caught everybody off guard. So without more information and knowledge, it'd be hard for me to play any blame.
CC, you're nodding your head. Is Art kind of articulating your point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing, I think always in the back of my mind when I, evaluating what's being discussed, the angle of a particular story, is we also need to be cautious of like what the media is choosing to present to the average people versus what not. So oftentimes, like I would actually watch the news from different channels, and so to get the different perspectives. So on the Afghanistan topic, I think it's I would like to believe that and I also think that the Canadians are still trying to get the people out there, and it is perhaps at this moment not appropriate just for the safety of those folks. Is we don't want to review all the details in the media. So, then then our opponent would know what's happening, so they can also plan ahead. So that's kind of my opinion there on that topic.
Okay. Let's talk COVID. There is a lot of jockeying back and forth on the campaign trail about vaccines, mandatory vaccinations, who's vaccinated, who isn't vaccinated. There are increasing cases. Some people are speculating about a fourth wave of the Delta variant this fall. when you think only about COVID, who do you think is the best party to be in government? Jane?
I'm sticking with the Liberals on this one. They've already got everything in place. They've already got their staff on the ground and battling this thing. And I think it would be really dangerous to, like they say, change horses midstream and put a new party in where the new people would have to learn everything, and it's start from ground zero. But additionally, one thing that I've noticed is if you look around the country, the places that have the worst response, the provinces and that have the worst response to the coronavirus have been those that are conservative led provinces. The Liberals and the NDP have done a better job provincially on the coronavirus response. So, yeah.
Okay. Kara?
I would say the same thing. And so for the Liberals, I think they've done a good job so far. I think one thing that does concern me is Erin O'Toole's constant referral to getting everything back, the economy, when I feel like we are still in a pandemic and we still have people losing their jobs, losing their lives that don't have that money, the tax back or whatever, because they don't even have a job to take care of themselves. And I kind of feel like we need to worry about some other things first. We're always in a deficit. It's never going to change, right? No matter who's in power, we still have it. So I think because of the situation we're in now, I see that the Liberals are taking care of that. And I agree with Jane, being from Ontario, I see how the Conservatives did not.
Okay, Sardou.
I'm going to disagree with that. Anywhere in the PC government and provincial level that's happening is most majority population in Ontario. This is what's happening. Another population in British Columbia, BC, there is a COVID cases coming up again. So you can't just blame like that party is a party. This is all should be from top to the bottom, same way to every province. So I don't think this is going to be my thinking is it's not like a Liberal government at the level of provinces doing better than other government. No, it's all the same.
I think it will be very hard to judge because the other two parties, they are not at the position as the same as Afghanistan crisis because they didn't have opportunity to be tested. So you don't know whether they can perform better or worse or the same. Therefore, using that as an evidence to say, we'll stick with one of the parties. And I think the evidence is not strong enough. And plus, we already have the foundation. For example, we are having the increased vaccination percentage, and also we have all these PPEs in place. And if you're still thinking about we spending endless money and without considering to make the economy come back, and consider currently it's so difficult to find people to work. And on the other side, people are saying, oh, they lose their job. So that isn't really reflecting the situation. So that I would say based on that, it's not fair to compare one party is going to do better than the other because the other two parties never had a chance to perform.
I do think they did provincially, though. There are provincial things that definitely happened through COVID and that they were responsible for, and you can see a big difference from the provinces.
Right, provincially is still there's a difference between provincial and the federal level.
Of course, but both parties, there were parties that had to do things for both situations, right? Conservatives in Ontario did stuff because of COVID provincially versus the Liberals who did it in Nova Scotia versus whatever. And when you compare percentages, I know populations, obviously Ontario's the highest, but when you look at percentages, percent school closures.
Well, just to give another example, for example, in BC, it's NDP, and even though at the initial time, we don't have like a higher positive rate. However, look into details. Actually, we didn't have a test for everybody who requests a test. So if you don't have a test, of course, you don't have a positive. result.
Art, what do you think?
I'm taking a different viewpoint. I think most governments, whether federal, provincial, or municipal, did pretty good jobs and did what the best they can. I put the blame on individuals not following the procedures and protocols. The gatherings, not wearing masks, not getting vaccinated. I don't think the situation is the continuing situation is the fault of any particular government. I think it falls on the shoulders of individuals not following what they should be doing.
Okay. Sonny, what do you think about this? There's some difference between the parties on COVID that makes you think one would be better than the other if this comes back and strongly this fall?
I think, honestly speaking, with the way everything's happened, I think both, like, I'm in Ontario, so we're under Conservatives, but I think the Liberals did a great job rolling out the benefits, helping people. I think the Conservatives, they did well as well. The only thing I would pick with the Conservatives is I feel they kind of go back and forth on some of what they say. Just regards to schools, last year was, schools aren't closing. 2 days later, we found out from the education minister they're closing. And then now our premier had said, they're not going to have passports. And now we're expecting an announcement next week that we're going to have vaccination passports. So I kind of feel like they say something, then they kind of backtrack it and then, do what they kind of said they wouldn't do. But from judging from the situation, I do believe that both parties or each party has done well under the circumstances.
Daryl?
I feel if we were voting strictly on how the reaction to COVID was, stick with the horse you're riding, it's doing well. But if we were to change, let's just say that the Conservatives took over and this was only just COVID, if another wave happened, I do want to believe that nothing would really change necessarily in their handling going forward, because we've already, a lot of the times it would be like a sunk cost fallacy. We've already sunk in this much money into PPE and vaccination and all of these other systems. If we tear it all down, people are going to go, where did we waste that money? Or even it would be, if they're going to listen to the health officials that they have appointed who say we should be doing X, then they would be saying the same things because it's the same people still who are underneath them. Bonnie Henry isn't going to be a different person if the Conservatives were all of a sudden in charge in BC. So they would still hopefully take that advice going forward.
Okay, Antonio?
Yeah, so if you look at it like what happened during the voting and like all the stuff when the pandemic started, if you were to compare what would happen, I agree, it's tough midstream. Changing horse is a dangerous thing, but I think, like Daryl said, a lot of the framework is in place, and it's not like every person that works for the government just quits and then they hire all new conservative people that run those things. But if you look back to when the pandemic started up, the Conservatives did kind of vote against and want some of these dollars that went out quickly I don't know if the Conservatives were in power there, if they would have gone out as quickly. That being said, what the Liberals wanted to do and what actually happened was because of the NDP. The NDP are the ones that pushed them to double the amount out to people. They wanted to give only business
they say that. Is that true, Antonio? They say that. Is that true?
I believe they're a minority government, and the NDP pushed them to up these amounts, right? They didn't just sign off on what the Liberals wanted to do. That's why I like this setup right now of, a Liberal minority with a strong NDP, to make them give the majority. I don't want to see a majority Liberal government because I like them being left in check by the NDP, right? My fantasy, and of course I say fantasy because it's just not reality in this country, unfortunately, is that the NDP would get, even a minority where the Liberals would have to do something along with them, and there would be some checks and balances there, or obviously would be an NDP majority would be the dream, but that's just the only possibility would be NDP minority. But anyways, back to what I was saying, the NDP pushed upping these numbers because Trudeau said, I remember the announcement, 25% out to businesses and stuff like that, and it got flipped all the way up to 75% because of the NDP prodding them. The dollars that came out to people, it was going to be less per month. It was the NDP that said, no, that's not going to be enough. People won't survive on that. What are you doing? And so if we were to go back, I think the NDP maybe would have, if they were in power, they would be able to handle it well. If you're giving me between liberal and conservative, I think the Liberals, the way they're handling it, the way they handled it financially, let's put aside any of the other things that I have moral things against, but that handling, I think the Liberals have handled it better. And if it's compared to what the Conservatives, I think if there was another huge wave where we shut everything down again, I don't know if the Conservatives would roll out the dollars quite as efficiently as and quickly as Liberals do. Yes, lots of people got money that shouldn't have got money. I know. I heard of people who basically, I'm applying for it anyways. Like they weren't working before that, but then they applied and got money. So, that stuff like that is bound to happen. There's always scammers, right? No matter who it is and how it's rolled out. But I think the Conservatives might have been, Canadians might have, and Canadian businesses even more so, might a little bit been more hard off if it wasn't for the NDP push.
Okay. Does anybody have anything they want to say about the election that they haven't had a chance to say today yet?
Well, David, I heard on the local AM 640 Global Toronto 2 days ago, they talk about Justin Trudeau. He may have underestimated this election, calling early. He still had 2 years left in his term, and that's what I heard. That's the additional information I heard on the radio. He may have underestimated other candidates. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Dragon. Sardou?
What I saw it, all the things we said Liberal government did, is all the credit should go to Jagmeet Singh. They didn't stop them. Any motion they bring it in, every motion passed, people say, why you call the election? It cost Canadians $600 million just for election. And this is where he made a mistake. He had till two years more to go. He can do, with the help of Jagmeet, anything he want to do for the country. And this is the biggest thing he's facing on the ground.
Art?
I think he listened to his advisors because he was leading the poll so well at the time. And then they said, well, if you go now, you can get a majority. I think he was probably advised to go to get the majority, and that's why he called the election.
Yeah.
I would agree with, probably he followed the advisors. I kind of like to giggle a little bit, but on the last election 2 years ago, I mean, he won on blackface against a decent candidate of opposition, and he still won on that. So if that was how he won, you'd imagine he's probably thinking, yeah, I could do this again. Let's go.
So what did I hear in all that? I heard that people are still not really engaged in this election campaign, not hearing much that interests them in the election campaign. Of all the announcements that have been made, the party's focus on housing is what broke through the most, but none of the housing policies sounded like game changers to people. No advertising is catching people's attention so far, which is interesting. Afghanistan is an issue that people are following, that people think is serious, but it has no partisan connotation to it and therefore little relationship to the election. The core question of what this election is about remains unanswered, and it is allowing voters to drift. O'Toole is taking the sharp edges off conservatism. Any fear of change does not come from his campaign, but from the performance of the Ford provincial government in Ontario. With limited fear of change, progressives have little fear of voting their preferences rather than rallying Liberal to stop the Conservatives. This may be the greatest Liberal imperative in this campaign right now, to create a sense of negative consequences from change. I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Telus, without whom this focus group project would not be possible. Their commitment to education and learning about politics and public affairs is really appreciated by all of us here at Air Quotes Media. Come back next week for another set of our regular Canadians talking about politics, talking about the campaign, and get an understanding of what they're looking at, what they're hearing, and how it's shaping their opinions and ultimately their votes.